I'm sure you're all familiar with images like this. Florence Nightingale, the lady with the lamp. It's a testament to everything that she achieved that now, 165 years later, she's still a household name. But these images don't really reflect the reality of who she was. They're a product of the Victorian PR machine, who tried to turn her into a suitable role model for women at a time when the only career options available for rich young women like Florence were wife or none. Now, I'm not going to try and talk about her achievements because I've only got 10 minutes, but what I do want to do is persuade you that she deserves to be known as much as a lady with the lamp as an Agile pioneer. And the way I'm going to do that is talk about her approach to problem solving and the approach she took to getting work done quickly and well, which is remarkably similar to the approach that we take in modern Agile software delivery projects today. So, if I can get this to work, yes. The first problem is the trust problem. So Florence first encountered this when she arrived at Scutari Hospital with her team of nurses and was told by the army doctors, go away, we don't want you here, we don't need you, everything's fine, a hospital's no place for a woman. Florence wasn't having this, and she argued with them, and she persuaded them to give her and her team access to the hospital kitchens. And this is a picture of a kitchen in Scutari Hospital after Florence had done her work and transformed it. What we know is that before she arrived, the soldiers were being fed raw meat, which was frequently rotten, and green unroasted coffee beans, which is clearly no diet for a recovering invalid. What Florence did was she cleaned it up. You can see in this picture, everything looks orderly. She established supplies of proper food from the local area, and later, she even brought in a team of French chefs. And there's one here, and you can see a couple of them over there preparing something that looks suitably delicious and appetizing. So in this way, she managed to reduce the death rate in Scutari Hospital before they even had any access to the wards. When the doctors did decide to trust Florence and her team and give them access to a hospital ward, this is what it looked like. You can see it's dark, there's soldiers lying on the floor. What you don't get from the picture is the smell. Accounts say that it reeked of infected wounds and open sewers, basically, because at the end of each ward were open, overflowing cesspits. And here's a picture of a ward in the same hospital after Florence had transformed it. How did she achieve this transformation? She used another Agile skill, prioritization. Now, I've got loads of stories I could talk about prioritization, but because we've only got 10 minutes, I'll stick to one. When they got to the hospital, the first job, the one that they thought was the most important, more than setting up a laundry, more than scrubbing and cleaning, more than dealing with the open sewers, was the removal of dead animals. And Florence and her team removed 24 dead animals from Scutari Hospital, among them one dead horse, which was poisoning the water supply. So the next Agile skill that she displayed was her intense focus on a meaningful outcome. She was 35 before she got to Scutari, and she'd been looking for meaningful work all her life and had kind of been thwarted until then. So the outcome that she focused on was healthy soldiers, and who can blame her? She threw herself into this and went way beyond just nursing them back to health so that they could go out and fight again. She set up education programs, libraries, and even a form of banking so that they could send their pay packets home to their families rather than spending it all in the bars in Scutari. And this is her next Agile skill, which I think is something she's actually quite famous for. She pioneered the use of data to drive decision-making and measure progress towards an outcome in healthcare. Unusually for women at the time, she'd studied statistics from the age of 12. And she'd always been quite unhealthily obsessed with using data to present information and tell a story. And these are some diagrams that she came up with to graphically represent the causes of death in army hospitals in the Crimean War. And in these diagrams, the blue areas represent deaths that were easily preventable due to disease picked up in the hospital or due to the lack of hygiene. The red in the chart represents deaths that can be directly attributed to wounds sustained in battle, and the black area represents death where they couldn't really understand the causes. Her next Agile skill was that she openly resisted detailed upfront planning. So the story behind this quote is that while she was busy working in the Crimea, she became quite famous back at home, and the Times, totally independently of Florence, set up a fundraising campaign so that she could come back to England and do her magic back here. And a prominent column suggested that Miss Nightingale might like to provide a cut and dried prospectus of how she would spend the money to help them with their fundraising. And this is Florence's robust response. I like even if I were to produce it, such a plan would only be subsequently altered or destroyed. A nice story about this fundraising is that to kick it off, the Times asked 200 prominent members of the community to spearhead the campaign. Only 2 people refused to contribute, and one of them was Charles Dickens. And her final Agile skill is learn through doing. So despite Charles Dickens' refusal, the Times campaign was very successful. They raised, I think it's about £50,000, which is a couple of £1 million in today's money. And the problem of how best to spend it didn't go away. Florence was under quite a lot of pressure to come up with a magic formula. She'd done something in the Crimea which had worked. Come and wave your wand and do the same thing back home. She insisted context is king, and she had to learn through doing. So she wanted to go and work in a hospital in London to understand what needed to be done there. So, to summarise, this is Florence's Agile skill set. Deliver value quickly to gain trust, prioritise, focus on meaningful outcomes, use data to measure success, drive decisions, and tell stories, resist detailed upfront planning, and learn through doing. There's no magic formula. So I hope you agree that alongside her Lady with the Lamp title, she deserves to be known as an Agile pioneer.
Thank you. Thank you. Big round of applause for Julia. Thank you.